Welcome to All About Motorized here, journey through automotive history. Today we're diving into the records of the first owners of cars from some of the oldest and most iconic car brands. Now you might think that's a bit dull, a bit like watching paint dry on a rainy Tuesday. But trust me on this one, these weren't just any ordinary blokes taking a spin around the block. These were pioneers, visionaries, and in some cases, complete lunatics. They were the first to experience the thrill, the freedom, and let's be honest, the occasional breakdown of these groundbreaking machines. So buckle up, because we're off. Right then, let's start at the beginning. 1886. A time when horses were still the preferred mode of transport, and the only horsepower you got from an engine was probably borrowed from an actual horse. Enter Carl Benz and his patent motor wagon. Now, old Carl may have invented the thing, but it was his wife, Bertha, who really gave it the beans. Imagine this. You've got a contraption that looks like it was cobbled together from a park bench and a sewing machine, and your husband tells you to take it for a spin. Not just any spin, mind you. A 66-mile jaunt to visit your mother. That's Bertha Benz for you. A woman who clearly wasn't afraid of a challenge or a mechanic with greasy overalls. Next up, we've got Henry Ford and his Model T. Now, Ford wasn't the first to build a car, not by a long shot, but he was the first to make them affordable for the average Joe. Before the Model T, cars were the playthings of the rich and famous. But Ford, he wanted to put the world on wheels, and he did. Farmers, shopkeepers, even the local vicar, they all wanted a piece of the action. It was like a plague of black beetles had descended upon the world. And you know what? The world was a better place for it. Now let's hop over to the land of the rising sun, shall we? Because Japan has a few stories to tell in the world of automobiles. Toyota, a name synonymous with reliability, started with a car that looked suspiciously like it had been nicked from Chrysler's design department, the Toyota AA. Not exactly a name that rolls off the tongue, is it? But it did the job, and the first person to own one, well, that was a brave Japanese soul who decided to take a punt on a brand new car company. Now, Nissan Datsun Type 12, 1933. Talking of the Japanese, let's not forget about Nissan, or as they were known back then, Datsun. The Datsun Type 12 was their first proper crack at a car, and it was a right little goer, small, nippy, and about as reliable as a Swiss watchmaker. It was a hit with the Japanese middle class, who were probably fed up with riding around on ox carts. On 5, Suzuki Suzulite 1955. Now, if you thought the Datsun was small, you're in for a treat. Because the Suzuki Suzulite makes a Mini Cooper look like a Range Rover. It was tiny. But after the war, Japan was in need of cheap, cheerful transport. The Suzulite was the answer to their prayers. It was like a little metal box on wheels, but it put Japan back on the move. At 6, Mitsubishi Model A 1917. Right, back to Japan for a bit of Mitsubishi action. Now, when you think of Mitsubishi, you probably think of reliable, if slightly dull, family cars. But their first foray into the world of automobiles was anything but dull. The Mitsubishi Model A, a car so advanced, so luxurious that it was initially only available to government officials. Here at 7, Peugeot Type 3, 1891. Right, let's hop across the water to France, shall we? Peugeot, a name synonymous with, well, French cars. But back in 1891, they were just starting out. The Peugeot Type 3 was their first real stab at a car, and it was a bit of a looker, if you ask me. And the first person to own one, Émile Peugeot himself. At 8, Rolls Royce 10GP 1904. Now, when it comes to luxury cars, there's one name that stands head and shoulders above the rest. Rolls Royce. The 10GP was their first masterpiece. A car so well built, so opulent, that it made other cars look like they were built in a barn. And the first person to own one? A chap called Henry Edmonds. 9. Renault Voiturette, 1898. Now, let's talk about Renault, the Voiturette. It was small, it was quirky, and it was French. What more could you want? And the first person to own one, Marcel Renault, one of the founding brothers. on 10 Fiat 3.5 GP 1900, and finally, let's round things off with a bit of Italian flair. Fiat. Now, Fiat might not have the best reputation for reliability these days, but back in 1900 they were at the top of their game. The Fiat 3.5 GP was their first offering, and it was a thing of beauty. And the first people to own one, the Italian aristocracy. The end? So there you have it, a whistle-stop tour through the history of some of the world's most iconic car brands and the lucky devils who were the first to own them. From Bertha Benz's epic road trip to Henry Ford's mission to put the world on wheels, these pioneers shaped the automotive landscape we know and love today. Thanks for joining us on this historical ride. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more fascinating automotive stories. See you next time.